going to find exact trigonometric values, 2 of them look like this, and the other 2 we just use our unit circle. We can't use our unit circle on the first 2 because they don't give you the angle. So in this case, we want to find cosecant of t. And we know cosecant is 1 over sine, or we could say it's 1 over y. We also know that cosine is x over r. So usually to find everything, we need an x, which we know is -1. We need our y, we don't know that. And our r is always positive, which is 5. This information just tells us what quadrant we're in. Between pi and 3 pi over 2, or 180 and 270 is quadrant 3. So I know in quadrant 3 my x and y are both negative. So the only thing I have to do is find y, because then I can write it as 1 over y. So basically, I'm going to use x squared plus y squared equals r squared, or it's your Pythagorean theorem. So my x is -1, and my r is 5. Basically, y squared equals 25 minus 1, because this equals 1. Now, so y squared equals 24. Take the square root of both sides. Don't forget to put the plus and the minus. So we get y equals plus or minus. I'm going to break this 24 up as 4 times 6. You want to get that perfect square in there. So we take the square root of 4, we get 2 square root of 6. So all we have to do is fill this out. We get 1 over, and by the way, are we going to take the positive or the negative? Since we're in quadrant 3, we have to take the negative. So our y is actually going to be just the negative. So it's going to be -2 square root of 6. Now, if that's your cosecant. And if you have to rationalize the denominator, you just multiply it by square root of 6 over square root of 6. That equals 1, so you're just making him look different. So that's going to be square root of 6. It's negative. And when you multiply these two together, square root of 6 times the square root of 6 is just 6. 6 times 2 is 12. So that is your answer. Or you could just leave it like this. They're both the same. Okay, the next one's similar. We need to find cosine, which is your x over r. You know your tan is y over x. And this tells us we're in quadrant 2. Quadrant 2, my x is negative. And my y is positive. And I don't know my r. So when I wrote tan like this, really the negative should go with the x. So you might want to move it down. That's why this quadrant thing is very important. You should also know your Pythagorean triples. So if you don't, make sure you know those. It's 8, 15, 17. And if you can get your Pythagorean triples down, you don't have to keep using the Pythagorean theorem. These are the perfect square ones. So I know my r is 17 and r is always positive. So I know my x is -8, my y is positive, and that was given as 15, and my r is 17. So cosine of t is just going to be -8 over 17. Okay, the next one is just finding these values. If you're having your unit circle, you know that this is bigger than 2 pi. 2 pi in this case would be 12 pi over 6. That equals 2 pi. The reason I'm putting it over 6 is because that's our common denominator here. So the first thing I'm going to do is make this angle coterminal by subtracting 12 pi over 6. And that gives me 5 pi over 6. Okay, and 5 pi over 6, this is it has a 6. This is the reference angle is pi over 6, which is 30 degrees. So basically, 5 pi over 6 is right in here. It's 150 degrees. Okay, that would be 5 pi over 6. Cosine, and remember, the only values you really have to know for your 30s and 60s is 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. In this case, my shorter side is the 1/2. My longer side is the square root of 3 over 2. But it's negative. That's with the radius of 1. So my answer to this is going to be negative square root of 3 over 2. Alright? And what all this 17 pi over 6 means is that you go all the way around, then you come back around to the same point. So this point here is negative square root of 3 over 2, 1/2, and cosine is your x. Cosine is your x, because that's your adjacent to the angle. And this point here would be the same point. You're just going around twice. This one, the same thing. The thing I'm going to do is subtract 2 pi from this. And that's going to be 12 pi over 6. And I notice it's not going to be big enough, so instead of 12 pi over 6, I'm going to do 24 pi over 6. This actually equals 4 pi, which is 2 rotations. That gives me my 5 pi over 6. So we're actually at the same place as before. 5 pi over 6. The only thing is we went around once, 2 pi, then 4 pi. Now we're back around to 5 pi over 6. So that triangle there is your 30, 60, 90. This point here is the same as we had before because this is in quadrant 2. 150 degrees there. This is going to be negative square root of 3 over 2. This is 1/2. Well, cosecant is 1 over sine. Or you could say it's 1 over y. Well, 1 divided by 1/2 is the same as when you keep, change, and flip. So that equals 2, and that is your answer. That's all. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.